I think it's terribly important to insist on individual values.
Learning Culture Podcast.
Initiative, creation, all these things which we value. It's now possible to make organizations on a larger scale than was ever possible before.
Learning Culture Podcast.
Teach people to analyze the kind of things that are said to them.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Learning Culture Podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Barry, and joining me this week is Steve Bousquet. Steve is the president of American Landscape and Lawn Science, a lawn care and landscape business based in Connecticut. Now, a lot of you are probably thinking right now, that's an interesting guest for an episode about learning culture. And that's exactly what I thought when I first met Steve. We met 2 weeks before the recording of this episode at a conference called Small Giants, which was a collection of businesses where learning and purpose and people are central. And that is the theme of our conversation. I love learning from people in industries I'm not familiar with. And Steve taught me a lot about how to think about learner mindsets in a business. In this episode, you'll learn about how it all starts, as I'd say often, with personal transformation. Steve is a self-professed learning nerd who never hesitates to hire a coach or to get a certification in something that he thinks could help him in what he set out to do. We'll then unpack some important lessons about the learner path mindset that Steve has installed for his team of 30 people. It covers communication styles, leveraging strengths, the growth mindset, and of course, purpose. And in this episode, Steve shares some very practical tools that you can use to enhance these 4 areas of your business, to promote and enable people in these 4 key areas. Sometimes you have to look at a business entirely different to your own to see a path and some principles that make sense and that can be applied to the situation you face. I left my conversation with Steve with that realization and ideas that I want to apply at Curious Lion. And I have no doubt that you will leave with some very practical takeaways from this conversation. So please sit back and enjoy my episode with Steve Bousquet. Steve, welcome to the show.
Great to be here, Andrew.
So we met 2 weeks ago now at the Small Giants Summit down in Detroit. And you and I sat over dinner, sharing a cocktail and a pizza with a group of people. And I think the two of us just started talking nonstop on the one end of the table about your philosophy in learning. And I thought right away that you are someone that my audience needs to hear from, because the principles that you've internalized and that you put in place at your company are things that all companies of all sizes and all industries are trying to do. And you guys have an interesting approach in that. So to set the scene, first of all, you own, run, operate, and manage a landscaping and lawn science business. And straight away, you told me we don't cut grass. So what's different about your business to kind of set the scene for folks?
So we're located on the eastern side of Connecticut. We have about 3,500 customers and we have 30 employees. And so our main business is an organic approach to lawn care. So we're doing lawn applications based off of soil testing. So we do use pesticides, but the concept is to reduce the amount of pesticides that we're using at people's homes. So they have a lower exposure. The pets have lower exposure. The kids have lowest exposure. So the whole concept is to feed the soil and only treat the pests, minimally. So people have to live with a couple of weeds in their lawn, but it's really getting soil healthy so the grass is healthy. And that approach really works. It's a long-term approach. It's not a quick and easy, fast approach. It takes a couple of years before you really see the lawn turn around. But as far as sustainability, it is actually the best lane that your lawn can be in. And then we also do landscape installation, where we focus on patios, outdoor kitchens, driveways, landscape planting, stuff like that, to really enhance people's outdoor experiences in their yard.
Well, 3,500 customers is testament to the great work you're doing. The other thing that struck me about you is that you, like myself, are kind of a learning nerd. Like you're obsessed with learning, and that struck me right away. So when it comes to this specific area of expertise, you've gone into like the science of this. Like you love that sort of stuff, right?
So yeah, I have all the licenses and degrees in science and agronomy, but we also run our own test plots, and we work with the Extension Center through the University of Connecticut to run test plots. And we have our own custom blended fertilizers. We use very specific types of lime to change the pH in the soil, which most people don't even know that you can get different types of lime. And we custom order our grass seed mixes, based on colors all the way from Oregon, and it comes in a big rail car. We have our own custom seed mixes. So they're water certified, so they only need half as much water as like a standard grass, but they also have that green that we're all looking for in our lawns. So I'm on that technical side, I'm always learning something, always communicating with the universities and studies on that. And then also in the personal development side, always learning. And, I became a certified chief question officer so we could move my company along on that learner path. I have other certifications that are in personal development, so I can bring that into my company.
Yeah, hypnosis was another one, right?
So I became a certified hypnotist, and it wasn't to trick anybody or get people to act like a chicken or do anything. It was just to learn how to like calm people down, make them feel more at ease. Because I realized that when people are anxious and they have high anxiety, they can't think straight, they don't think clearly, they don't feel comfortable. And I want people to make the very best decisions, in a sales process and in my company. And if you can relax your mind and relax yourself, feel comfortable, that's when that sense of clarity comes through. So that's what we used. That's why I took it. And it was fun. I learned a lot. We actually did a lot of work more with people who had suffered trauma. That was kind of a lane that we worked in. So to help people through that. So it wasn't the stage hypnosis stuff.
Yeah. But you that sort of, I guess, like desire to look at other areas, other domains to see what can you learn that's improving your business is kind of a common theme here, right? You're like your personal, you're so focused on personal development. And I guess my question on that is like, has it always been like that? Is that something that you started doing once you started your own business? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah, I've always been taking classes and extra classes. I had a double major in college, and I ran my business at the same time. And I've always been taking courses. I took a small engine mechanics course through the night program when I was in my early 20s, just to learn how to fix, small engines, which helped in my business. I took art classes, drawing classes. I've actually became a really accomplished letter carver in slate. And, it just gets you to look at the world around you differently. And so I like to study things that I'm not any good at and become proficient at it. I've played poker at a really high level in Vegas, at Foxwoods Casino in Connecticut. And I had a poker coach in that too. So whatever I get into, I really push it as far as I can. And one of the life hacks I found is to, get the teachers who are the very best and make them hang out with them and become friends with them and go to dinner and take their classes and become part of their circle and support them. So
that definitely resonated for me as well when we met, and all the common people we knew that you had kind of been learning together with. So I think the point I want to make here for folks listening is that, and I actually at that conference that we met at, I talked about this, was that so much of company learning and company transformation starts with personal transformation. It's by people, especially the leadership of a company, committing to being a lifelong learner, right? And that, I'm pretty sure you'd agree, is a good title for you. So it starts from there. And you told me a little bit earlier before we started recording, and you call it the learner path mindset, which I think is awesome. You got inspired by listening to someone else talk about this to put it in place at your company. Can you tell us that story of where you suddenly clicked that okay, I need to do this at my place.
So I was invited to a high school bacon academy in Colchester, Connecticut, to be part of this Bacon 10, to come up with 10 things that the high school really needed to focus on. And it was just a discussion at this meeting, and there was people from all different industries and different parts of the community. And there was a guy there from an engineering firm, and he was talking about at his company, they needed critical thinkers and problem solvers. And then as the conversation went on, he was sharing how his company had come to a complete standstill where no work was getting done. Because if you failed or made a mistake or asked a question, you were ostracized for it. And people were just so afraid to do anything that nothing was happening at all. So I was like, how do I move my company so far away from that experience into that a learner mindset, being curious, where failing is actually required? Like, we have a saying, if you're not failing at something here, you're just not trying hard enough. You can't fail on the basic stuff, but we need to push you past where you're at, and you need to learn and make mistakes. So you learn, when I letter carved, it's just the series of making mistakes until you get to a point where you're making less and less and less. And you just have to go through that. And you can read all the books you want, but you have to put the chisel to the stone and hit your hammer. You cannot read that or watch it on a YouTube video. So you fail a lot. But after hearing that guy and the fear and like just the tension in his voice, it wasn't critical thinkers they needed or problem solvers. They needed question askers.
Yeah.
And someone shared a joke with me about engineers a few years later. And they said, Indian engineers have a joke. What do American engineers do when you ask them a question? They answer. And they just think that's hilarious because they don't ask questions. But that's so, I wanted to get as far away from what that guy was experiencing in my business as I could.
And that's, I know a lot of people listening will resonate with that fear of failure that's holding people back. That was such a great analogy. You got to put the chisel to the stone, and that's that like bias to take action, to do it with knowing that, they call it failing forward, like knowing that it's like part of the process actually. Like that's, I think for me, the key is like you're seeing it as part of the process of growing and developing. And so what was your team like? What was your company like at that time? Like, and because I want to contrast it with where you are now.
So we had a good team, but it was really production driven. It was really focused on sales and getting work done. So we didn't really have a lot of meetings. We did not have a lot of like programs for education. Yeah. If people wanted to become a certified nurseman, we would, pay for the course and give them time to study for that. Or if they wanted to be a certified supervisor in turf ornamentals, we would help with that. But it was all really kind of industry driven. We didn't have any kind of personal development in the queue, to put it that way. Nothing was scheduled and planned. So management meetings, we did those, management training. So it was all around that. But I kind of said, well, if we can get people, I can teach the trade and the skills, but I need to get the mindset shifted. And that has to come outside of just the craft or the skill and the trade. Right. So I hired a coach to start working with because I did not know what to do. That was way past my, skill set. So I started working with Dr. Sabrina Starling, and she kind of put us on the path for this mindset.
And so there's a key point or sort of moments in that initial thing where you said, you needed to like motivate this behavior change. Well, I think so. You didn't say motivation, but for me, motivation comes a key part in here. Was there anything? I get this question a lot. Like, how do you motivate people who don't see the benefit in personal development? Like it seems to come naturally to, do you see some folks who didn't get it right away, and like, what do you do to motivate them to see that there is a path that they can take?
So I have a 1/3 rule, right? So with everything I do, I find 1/3 of whoever a group, if you're talking to a group, 1/3 gets it right away. Yeah. 1/3 does not want anything to do with it. 1/3 you can kind of coach and guide through. So how do we get the last third through is kind of what you're saying, and it's that late adopter kind of mentality, really. Yeah. And so we just keep putting it in front of people. And, I have 1,000-day theory. Anything that I think about and then implement, and then, we go through with it, and then we kind of assess it and readjust and move forward with it. It takes about 1,000 days. And we kind of track that and joke about that at work, because that's about 3 years, a little less than 3 years. And it sounds like a long time, but when we really look at from the very first time we thought about it to when we have it really dialed in, and the measurables and deliverables are tractable, it's about 1,000 days. So those last third of the people, they're not admitting that they're getting benefit from it. They're quiet, whether they're introvert or shy or just quiet about it. But then you'll hear stories they share with people. It'll be in quiet moments where they say, this happened, instead of me going down judger path, I asked a couple questions.
Yeah.
Boy, did that help my relationship this weekend. And it could have went really bad if I didn't just stop and ask these 3 questions.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And you alluded to a few things that we'll unpack there now. Like there's a common language that you've created at your company by introducing some tools and some ways of thinking about things, which I think is really smart, because it allows those conversations to happen. And so I think for me, what you told me, that a lot of this starts with the assessment work you do with people. You've mentioned a few things offline, and so I think it'll be helpful to kind of talk through what that progression looks like, from the people map to Clifton strengths to the choice map. And I think that the principles here, again, it's like that common language. It's also it's helping people connect to why they're doing this, what's like the purpose of it for them, all of those kind of things. So yeah, how did you put all that into place at your business?
So working with Dr. Sabrina Starling, it starts with the people map, which tells us people's communication styles. So there's leader free spirit, people task, task free spirit, task leader, and we have this charted on all over the office, so everyone can see it. So if I come to talk to you and you're people task, I have to go, first it's about the people, and then it's about what we do.
Yeah.
We're task people. It's about what we're going to do, and then who's going to do it. So it's a different conversation, and it just helps understand. But that simple people map was so powerful, because at our Christmas parties, we have a lot of high task people. Being in the green industry, it's hands-on stuff. We would have a Christmas party every year, and it would last about 2 hours, and people would eat and chit chat, and it was dull and boring, and you could see people, it was not a big benefit. Well, after we did the people map, and we found out that 75% of my people are task focused people, we put activities into the Christmas party. The unwrapping this saran wrap ball that has gifts and goodies in it, and Jenga competition and cornhole. Now the Christmas party is 4 hours long, and they love it, because we tuned into what their communication style was.
Yeah.
So we do the people map, and then the next thing we do is a Clifton strength assessment. So it's not a personality test; it's really a strength test. And the whole purpose of doing that is to take their top 10 and aim their strengths at work. Because when people are having their strengths aimed, that gives them energy. So if people are going home exhausted and tired from being like half bored, or they're out of their energy zone, that's there's your sign, that they're not using their strengths. So we work really hard at aiming people's strengths, and they just come to work more engaged. And all the statistics and all the work, psychology, industrial psychology, shows that the more people use their strength, the more engaged they are.
Yeah, they're doing what comes naturally.
Yeah, so that's a big thing, and that's not easy to do. I mean, you have to have some conversations. We've had people in the wrong jobs. We've had people in their perfect jobs.
Yeah, and then you can make the adjustments. So okay, so I want to kind of keep summarizing where we're at, because this is great. So I think the first piece is what you described, the people map. Sounds like a disc profile as well, right? So it's like
it's only 7 questions.
Oh, nice. So like a super quick delivery.
It's super easy, but it's like the disc profile.
Yeah. Okay. And so that's like communication style. Then the next one is like identifying and leveraging strengths. Let's talk about the choice map.
So the choice map, it was created by Mary Lee Adams. She's a PhD, and it goes over 2 paths. we're always starting at every conversation, every decision, even in conversations in our own mind. We start on this path, and we can make a choice to either go down the judger path, which puts you into the judger pit. And the judger path sounds like this: what's wrong with him? How's he going to be difficult this time? What's wrong with him? What's wrong with me? Why can't I do this? Why does he always have to be a jerk about these meetings? And you can stay in this literal pit. But if you want to get out, there's the thing called the switching path. And you can ask questions like, do I want to stay in this judger path? How am I feeling right now about being in the judger pit? What do I want? What's possible?
Yeah.
And that gets you back onto the learner path. Now, the learner mindset is like, what do I want to feel? What do I want? What do I need? What's possible? What's best to do now? The challenge with the judger pit is you can stay in there for a long time if you don't have the switching questions to get out.
Yeah.
So we now that is a lot of work to introduce this. I've done this. I became certified in this so I could do really good presentations, and now I've given it to about a dozen companies, this presentation. And you have them share relationships that they're in judger, and where it shows up in their body. Where does that anxiety and stress, is it showing up in your shoulders, in your neck, in your stomach? For some people, it's their whole body. When they're talking about relationships they're in judger with. And then I have them talk about a relationship that they're in learner with, and they sit up, they're straighter, they're smiling, their faces are, completely different. So it's not just in our mind and our words, it's in our body where this judger and learner show up.
Yeah, it reminds me a lot of the fixed mindset, growth mindset shift, right? And so like you've given people, it's like a super practical way. I love the idea of also those prompts that are there for you to go, like, listen to what your body's saying, listen to that feeling, and then have the prompts to kind of help you think through it.
Right.
Is it something that people do themselves, like individually, or do you also like work, like you have like coaching and mentoring that happens amongst your team?
So we have one-on-ones with their direct reports. For the office, it happens every week, and for the field, it happens every 3 weeks. And so there's some coaching with that. But with the choice map, we found we have to do that 3 times a year. And it's one of those exercises where we go over the choice map. And even though it's the same exact material, it could be really different to each individual person, depending on what they're going through at that time. People have life changes, they get married, they get divorced, they buy a house, they have a child, a parent dies, and, they have a new position at work. So their life is changing. So how they're thinking and looking at things, the choice map becomes a little bit different each time we do it. It just keeps it fresh in people's mind.
Yeah.
But the one-on-ones are really more like, we have them share win and successes, challenges. What do they want to learn more about? What are they being curious about? What questions are they asking themselves? So, and that's not a job performance conversation. That's more to keep people on that learner mind path. Right.
And I'm going to come back to a couple of those last questions in that performance or that one-on-one review. There's something I feel like that may complete, like I almost see like this like big four that you have. You've got the people map, right, which is the ComStar, the Clifton strength stuff for leveraging strengths, this choice map to kind of get people to get into that learner or growth mindset. And then you said you do a lot of work with Simon Sinek's why. Where does that fit in?
So that's so we have a 1,000-day development program. Starts with the people map and goes through. And the last final stage is the why, finding your why. Because I went through that, and I was like, wow, wouldn't it be amazing if I had 30 people on my team who all knew their why? If people were coming to work every day knowing their why and living their whole life knowing their why, even if it meant them leaving my company, I'm okay with that. I'm willing to support that. So we hired, we have a therapist. She's a counselor, I guess, down in Houston, Texas. And we do all this work remote with her. And so we go through that process with her, and my team goes through. Now that's a lengthy process. There's quicker ways to do it, but we think there's values, and part of it is you have to write 6 stories that impacted your lives the most. And then you go over this with her, and then you identify the common themes in it to help get to your why. So we think it's worth taking the time to write the stories and discuss it with her. And so she is a friend of mine, told me about her. She's kind of like a faith counselor. So if people are struggling with their faith, she was helping. But I reached out to her. So we've been working with her since 2018. And even what's interesting is I've shared this story with other people, and some of my vendors and friends have also hired her. And
That's awesome.
when you do, it's amazing. When you do the Simon Sinek course, there's a coach's guide that goes along with it. So she follows the coach's guide.
Yeah.
And it's that doing that is so powerful. There's just no way you can get through that without being emotional. And, but which is fine, because you have to kind of deal with loss and challenge and growth.
And so I'm going to probably ask you for that person's contact details, because I can see the value of this for my team. I believe so strongly, I think you and I talked about this, and I feel like you believe this as well, is that we want to encourage people to bring their whole self to work, because with all the good and the fear and anxiety and doubt and all of that, right? And help them work through and integrate those things to become a better person, to develop, to grow, even to the point, like you said, that they leave. And because that's ultimately better for them, it's better for you, it's better for everyone, right? And that my point here is that having people come with their whole self to work is just better for the business, right? Because that also means they bring their creativity and their drive and their energy and all that kind of stuff. And so kind of saying I'm going to take everything means you get the best of someone at the same time.
Yeah. And I mean, we all have the very best parts, and we have some parts that, we struggle on. And one of the things that I found in this development that has been so powerful to my team is we used to operate in a lot of silos on projects. And what happens is people would make really good progress, and then not so much toward the end. And so we're like, well, they're procrastinating, or they're not taking this serious. But what we found out was they ran out of their strengths.
Yeah.
So they used all their strengths and they couldn't finish it. So we really look at pairing people now on projects with complementary strengths, so they can work on teams. So most people we find can get 80% of a project awesome. I mean, just done amazingly, but they're missing something. And when you pair them together in teams, it just changes it. So we found stuff was getting done quicker. It was getting done more accurately. It was getting done with more innovation. And I'm not saying we don't have any silos, but we really work on eliminating silos.
Yeah. I was literally having this conversation with a team member. We had a disc session this morning, funnily enough. And I'm the kind of person who likes to start brand new things and take them to like 80%, but then I'm usually on to the next brand new thing. And she loves finishing things and like taking, so it was just like this perfect combination. But you don't know that until you have these conversations, which is hard to have without the common language.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, it's your host, Andrew here. I wanted to take a second just to say that if you're enjoying this podcast, we would love it if you did a couple of things for us. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. It really allows us to grow the channel and reach a lot more people like you. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, take a moment to leave us a rating and review. It's a great way to give us some feedback and to tell the world what you think about this podcast. So whether you listen to it on YouTube or you're listening to it as a podcast, if you take one of those actions, it would mean the world to me and my team. Thank you. And with that, right back to the show. So that's really, really cool. Sort of 4 things there, the calm style, the leveraging of strengths, the growth mindset, and then the purpose, I think, is this Simon Sinek's why. You talked about one particular person on your team who had this great realization of just like how she communicated things, how she dealt with certain things. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about specifically here, but examples have you seen of people kind of like having these like aha moments?
It's really when they go home. So they bring the choice map home, and they put it on the refrigerator. So they start having these discussions at home with their family. And her daughter, who's 6, will say, if something's going on, Mommy, what's a good switching question here? So
Yeah.
the 6-year-old will start to recognize it. But it's really impacted people on my teams, like they've never been recognized for their strengths before. It's always, oh, you're not good at math, you need to do this better. Or instead, they've never been like acknowledged for what they're really good at. And one of my team members has high empathy. And she was told, you feel too much, you're too emotional.
That's it.
Well, what we did was we allowed her her empathy is her superpower.
Yeah.
And she shows up to work with her empathy. And,
Yeah.
she's in the HR, segment of my company and also runs the office, but people are she's people first.
Yeah.
And so we recognize and allow her to lead with empathy. And it just, changed the energy, in the office and in the company and in her own life. She's kind of reached out. She started doing 300-hour certificate or for yoga training, and she started going past like her own limitations because this release on being acknowledged for, no, you're not feeling too much, you're not being too emotional, you're being exactly perfectly who you are.
Yeah. And that's a strength. Yeah. I love that. That's such a great story. And then you're bringing out the best in people, and they're playing to their strengths every day. They're enjoying it like that. You can't not have a strong company if you've got everyone doing that.
Yeah, and some people will look, well, it's logical. It's not. You shouldn't have emotions involved. That there's nothing that's not emotion. Even on Wall Street, when you see those guys losing money, they know logically. Markets are cyclical, and markets go up and down, and there's corrections done. But you see those hardened Wall Street guys, it looks on their faces, they're very emotional. So life is emotional, work's emotional. So to say it's not, you can make logical choices and decisions, but that doesn't mean you don't feel about them.
Yeah, I love that. None of this is easy though either, right? Like getting these things in place and all this great work that you've done. What are some of the challenges that you've seen in implementing some of this at your work, and how have you overcome those?
So, you just heard me kind of cheerlead this whole thing. I dragged my heels. If I did not hire a coach and Dr. Sabrina Starling was not pushing me, I would have never kept following through. Because I'm like, well, I want to see what's the percent return, what's the ROI, and that, it's not always that. So you have to do it step by step, and you have to you can't, if I keep overwhelming people with new things, they're like, okay, this is Steve's new project. So you have to kind of start with one, have success with it, live with it a little while, start the second one, have success, live with it a little while. So I think, and my number one strength is activator, which is to go and to start stuff. So people know that. So I had to kind of slow myself down, give people time to, sit with it and learn from it. So for me, the hardest part was just being really diligent and patient.
Yeah.
And it's not the cheapest thing to do in the short term, but long term, I mean, we have such a high retention and such low turnover that it takes us about $45,000 to train a new employee up to 100% production. So if we can keep somebody, it's cheap. The training and development is cheap compared to that.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that next. Like, how have you been able to measure some of the ROI? Because that is something that every company struggles with. Like, you spend $45,000 per person. How have you been able to show what the ROI is on that investment?
So I'm in a national contracting group, and so we have the highest gross profit margin in that group, and these are in the top 20% in the industry. We also have our production rates for our lawn applicators are in the top 2% in the country. So a lot of the stuff sounds kumbaya-ish that we're doing everything, but when you have people showing up in their strengths, I don't have to motivate them. They're in their
Right.
strengths. So when you're in that energy, it's self-motivating. And so just being in the top, percent, 2% in the whole country in that,
Yeah.
it's a big deal. And the numbers show it. I love numbers tracking. We
Yeah.
track things by the minute and by the ounce and
Yeah.
by the 1,000 square feet.
So
So we're
productivity.
tracking and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And don't you also have like a crazy customer retention rate? As I feel like you were telling me, like, yeah, customers just don't leave, right?
Yeah, we have customers for a long time. I mean,
Yeah.
the majority of our customers are only going to leave, if they pass away, they move, they
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
divorced, something like that happens. So we
Yeah.
have a really high customer retention rate. It's about 20% higher than the industry standard,
Yeah.
which, when you're talking over 3,000 customers, that's a lot of customers.
Yeah.
And, our why for our company is, to encourage and motivate people to continue forward regardless of the challenges. So we learn and grow in a mutually fulfilling relationship.
Mm.
So we took it's not mutually beneficial, it's fulfilling. So if
Mm.
you're working with us, we want you to become more, your lawn, your landscape to become more, and we want to become more as a company. So it's not transactional.
Right.
And when you shift away from transactional into relationship, the experience changes for the customer, the employee, and the community.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, I'm also reminded of something we talked about where I forget what the trigger was, but it was for a customer to do something, or that they had to call your office, and you have someone answering the phone. Then they're like that customers just love. Like, can you?
So so we have 3 people in the office that have the customers just absolutely love, and sometimes I'll just call just to talk with them even.
Yeah.
But we have 2 people that their communication, woo, which is winning others over, positivity and adaptability are in their top 5 strengths. So they are in their perfect job.
Mm. Yeah.
Talking on the phone all day to customers gives them
Yeah.
energy. Where some
Yeah.
people are like, oh my gosh, I have to do that all day,
Where's the
every
go?
day, and
Yeah.
for the whole year. They're like, hey, Mr. Delgado, how are you? How's
Yeah.
your wife? How's
Yeah.
did your son, get the house he was, trying to buy? So
Yeah.
we have a lot of these relationships, and having people in the company that are allowed to do that,
Yeah.
and customers that New England is really kind of a tight knit,
Mm.
geographical area. It's important, and we want to be part of people's communities, their
Yeah.
lives.
Yeah. Yeah. This whole ROI question, I think, is something that's, I mean, it's you look at those facts that you've laid out there. It's impossible to not say that that investment is contributing to that, but it's also impossible to say it directly. It's like a mathematical equation, and I think I'm kind of realizing that that's okay. Like, there is enough indirect, and it's a mixture of direct and indirect, but there's enough to say like it can't possibly be anything else that's really. I mean, maybe there are some other factors as well. Obviously, like the work you talked about at the beginning, and the innovation around the products and stuff. But that so much of that is driven by your team anyway, right? Like, you're a people business.
We are in, so we do a thing, it's called wish list interviews, and it's part of our marketing plan that we use kind of a pumpkin plan process. Mike McCallowitz wrote a book called The Pumpkin Plan, which is basically farmers growing giant pumpkins and putting all their concentration effort in growing, one giant pumpkin instead of trying to grow 15 or 50,000. So we call up our best clients, and there's a qualification. You have to pay your bills and buy the best stuff and give us referrals and different things like that. And we interview them, and it all goes back to communication. It all goes back to our people, that they can talk to our lawn technicians and they have answers for them. They can call the office and talk to someone. If they have a problem, someone goes out to their house to see them. And it was never about, well, this weed died or didn't die, or, my lawn wasn't that green,
Yeah.
this 3rd week of March. Or so, I mean, we do a really good job with the lawns, but what's really important to people is that communication.
Yeah. Yeah, and that is the intangible. And another thing I've been talking and writing about recently is that work is pretty much voluntary, right? You probably I'm sure you pay people well, but like you can't pay them that much more than your competitors, right? Otherwise, it's not good for your business. So you have to do other things, and I think this is true for any company in any industry. Only a certain amount more you can go, and so money becomes, from a motivational perspective, kind of table stakes, right, for people. Like, so then they're looking at what else does this company offer to be able to invest my time in. And again, it's voluntary, like people, and it's these things, it's this, everything that you've shared. It's like people, your retention rate of your people, like you said, is so high because they love being there.
Yeah, our retention rate is 90% over the last 15 years.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So people want to stay. And I know my people, with what they've been trained, the skills they have, they could go get jobs that pay more.
Yeah.
But then they're just a cog in the wheel.
Yeah.
They're not recognized. Like, one of the things we do that's unique for a very tiny company of 30 people is every single one of my employees has their own parking spot with a nameplate. They have
awesome.
Their name is written on, their marker for their parking spot. I mean, no one here has ever worked anywhere where they've had their own private parking spot with their name on it.
Yeah.
And it's just one way to be recognized right at the beginning of the day.
Yeah. I love that. Steve, we could talk for hours. Probably we did over dinner.
We did talk.
For a lot of occasions there. I think this is a really good kind of overview and summary of what strikes me as just a very innovative, creative, and people first approach to business, and purpose driven as well. If people want to learn more about what you do, I know, so we didn't even talk about it. You're a coach as well. You're a certified profit first coach. And I mean, what should people check out if they want to learn more from you and kind of follow the journey a bit more?
So I am a partner in Green Profit Academy. I'm a profit first coach. And my partner is Christine Era, and she's the author of Profit First for Lawn Care and Landscape Businesses. And I was the expert contributor in that book. And you can reach out to me at steve@greenprofitacademy.com. We also have a YouTube channel that I'm starting to populate YouTubes with videos and going over what our onboarding looks like. Like, we have a really nice onboarding system. We have a hiring method that we, have a working interview where people can come in and try the job before we make a decision. They make a decision. Is this what you want to do? Is it a good fit for us? Is it a good fit for them? They go out and we pay them to go out in the truck and do the work and spend the day out there. And sometimes people come back and say, this is not for me, or they come back and say, absolutely. So I'm going to be making videos on YouTube on working interviews and our onboarding process and our 1,000-day development and the choice map and all the things that we just talked about.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a good idea. I'm so glad you're doing that. I'll include links to your channel to be able to get in touch with you. And you're going to have this interview. I mean, this was just like such a great description of kind of the overall process. I feel like I understand it a lot better now and I'm going to do some things differently myself. So...
Yeah, it's been a learning path. We have been on the learner path, and it's interesting. I actually worked with a attorney out of New York City who was working on a family law case, and they couldn't get past a certain point. So I worked with her on the choice map, and everyone was stuck in the learner pit. And so they brought the choice map to court, and they shared it with the clients and everything, and the clients kind of figured out their own way out. And came up with their own solution and using the switching path. What do I want? What's possible? What's best to do now? And it was pretty interesting to hear that story, how helpful that was.
And that's kind of the point, right? That's such a perfect way, I think, to end this, that they figured it out themselves and you just create the environment, the space, you enable people to, they have the answers somewhere within.
They all will have the answer. It's not that, right. They all have the answer. They just have to ask the question.
That's perfect. Steve, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Andrew. It was great being on this with you.
Hello. I hope you enjoyed that episode. It's Andrew again with a quick message. If you'd like to support the show, the best way to do that is to leave us ratings and reviews where you listened. If you're on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe buttons and feel free to leave a comment. We love hearing from our listeners and viewers. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, please take the time to give us a rating and leave a review. Once again, we love hearing from our loyal listeners. If you're listening to this on Spotify, please hit the follow button to make sure that you don't miss new episodes as they come out. And as a reminder, this episode is sponsored by the Learning Culture Experience, a first of its kind cohort-based learning experience for learning professionals, in which you will join a community of 50 other innovative learning professionals designing and developing cohort learning experiences that you can roll out in your companies. To find out more about the program and when the next cohort is starting, check out curiouslion.cloud/experience. See you next week for another episode of the Learning Culture Podcast. Thank you for listening.